When I was 24, me and my sister moved into an apartment together. At the time, I was going to college to get my master's, and she was going in to get her degree. The rent was $500 a month. I know, cheap. We only paid $250 each. But the neighborhood was bad. There was a lot of crackhead, gangs. There was a shooting just about every week. I know, just crazy. Anyways, one day in the middle of the night, we get a hard banging on our door, and it's a lady calling out for help. When I opened it, she had a black eye, she was bruised up, and her forehead was bleeding. I asked what's going on, and she replied her boyfriend is trying to kick her and her kids out of their place. She explained she has a 1-year-old and a 5-year-old, and her boyfriend is throwing all of their things out, so I walked over back to her apartment, which was 2 floors down. When we finally reached the apartment, the whole apartment was on fire. She screamed and said her babies were in there. Come back for part 2. This is part 2 of how my neighbor's boyfriend set her apartment on fire with her children inside. If you didn't watch part 1, go watch that so you can understand this part. So, like I said, the apartment was on fire and she was screaming about her kids. And she tried to run in and get her kids, but I stopped her because there was no way she and her kids were going to make it out alive. Few seconds later, her boyfriend walks up and says, "Let her go." And she runs over to him and swings on him a couple times and says, "What did you do? Get them out." And he replied, "I told you to leave, right?" She falls to her knees, and at that point, she just stops crying. So I run upstairs calling for help, telling everyone to get out and call the fire department. The fire starts to quickly spread, and everyone is coming out of their apartments. When I went back to the area where the lady was, her boyfriend disappeared, and I picked her up from off the ground. I brung her into the parking lot where everyone else was. After 20 minutes, the fire department finally shows up. Come back for part 3. This is part 3 of how my neighbor's boyfriend set her apartment on fire with her children inside. So, like I said, the fire department finally shows up after 20 minutes. I told them there were kids inside, and they went up to find them. They put the fire out. Right after, a firefighter came up to me and said there was no one in there, and I told him no, there were 2 kids. A couple minutes later, a few detectives and cops came up to me and asked me a few questions about the scene, asking things like if I know who started it and about my neighbors. A couple minutes later, there was an old man, which I found out was one of my neighbors. He came from the side of the apartment complex screaming that there was a little boy on his back, lying on the ground, saying that he couldn't move. So quickly, the detectives go over to where my neighbor said the boy was. I'm running out of time. Part 4 will be up soon. This is part 4 of how my neighbor's boyfriend set her apartment on fire with her children inside. After one of my neighbors claimed they saw a little boy on the ground in the back of the apartment complex, and the boy's arm was pillows wrapped up in a comforter. When the detective got the paramedics to pick the boy up, they took the comforter he had and they opened it, and inside was a baby. After the whole situation was over, they took me in for questioning. Also, by the way, they admitted the lady into the hospital as well because she was bruised up really bad, and anytime anyone asked her anything, she was mute. During my time in the police station, they told me about the little boy. Come to find out, that little boy on the ground in back of the apartment complex was her son. They said he wrapped his baby sister up to protect her from getting hurt. Baby girl was fine. The pillows he wrapped her in softened her fall. But for the little boy, he was paralyzed. This story time is from a follower, and he really needs advice. By the way, we're calling him Jason, and he's 17. So Jason has been with his girlfriend for about 1.5 years. The whole relationship was great, and they never had any serious problems until recently. Jason came out as bi and told Kayla, and he still wanted to be with her, but Kayla broke things off with him. She told him that she didn't want to be with a bisexual man. So after breaking all ties with him, she distanced herself, and after 2 months of being apart, Kayla says she started to feel really weird and she was sick. Come to find out, she was pregnant. But Kayla doesn't want the baby and wants to get an abortion because she doesn't want nothing to do with Jason. But Jason, on the other hand, really wants the baby. He said he knows he's young, but he's prepared. Jason feels really conflicted. He loves Kayla and wants her to do what's best for her. But he said he'll take care of the baby himself and be a single dad if he could. But guys, please give him some advice down below in the comments. The students at the school for nursing got along quite well, except for Alice. The problem with Alice was that she was just too perfect. Well, at least that's what it seemed like to the other students. She was always friendly, always cheerful. Her assignments were always on time and just perfect. Many of the students resented Alice. They would have liked to see her fail or cry or get scared sometimes, just to show she had weaknesses just like them. One night, many of the students tried to frighten Alice as a practical joke. They borrowed the hand of a corpse they had been studying in anatomy and tied it to the light cord in her closet. And when she tried to turn her light on, she would find herself holding a dead man's hand. That would scare anyone, one of them said. Afterwards, they went to the movie theaters. When they got back, Alice was asleep. But when they didn't see her the next morning, they decided to find out what happened. They looked everywhere for Alice, and when they found her in the closet on her floor. She was sitting there staring at the hand and mumbling. Well, the joke worked, but nobody was laughing. Story time about the old man that died in our basement. At the time, my mom was a CNA and she would do at-home care. One of the people that she took care of was one of her best friend's uncles. She would drop him off Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. He was in the 70s, he had arthritis, and was bedridden. So my mom would feed him, clean him, and change his diapers. But he was so mean. He didn't like me or my brothers and sisters. Just a little old grumpy man. But my mom would keep all her patients in the basement. By the way, which didn't look like a basement. It looked really nice, almost like a hospital type. So one day my mom needed to leave the house to go get food for the man. And she told me to watch out for her and call her if anything ever happened. So I went down there and he just stared at me the whole time. I said hello and he rolled his eyes. Couple hours passed, I'm scrolling on my phone, and his heart starts beating really fast. He looked like he was trying to cough and was reaching out for me. Everything happened so fast, I was in shock and I didn't know what to do, and he grabbed my arm. When I was 6 years old, my family moved to Virginia because my dad had a new job opportunity. We moved to this really old house that every step that you took, you'd hear the floorboards cracking. During the summer, I met this girl named Lucy. She knocked on my door one day and asked if I wanted to play, so for weeks, me and Lucy grew closer. We'd play hopscotch, jump rope, hand games, and hide and seek. One day, we were getting ready to play hopscotch, and my mom came outside telling me to come in and eat dinner. I asked my mom if Lucy could come too. My mom had asked, "Who's Lucy?" I looked back at Lucy and I said, "She's right here." My mom replied,